So last weekend I was in Branson at the annual conference, and it was a good conference. And like I said, I did do more than eat. If you've ever been in Branson, I also spent a lot of time making right turns and hoping that I didn't have to make a left one. Spent a lot of time. Note to self: never go to Branson in June because the tourist season has started. That is a bad time to be there. Food is good. Don't drive. But we did. We had a good conference, and it was the first time that we had been in person since 2019 for annual conference. And we started out the conference as every annual conference has for a couple of hundred years in the state of Missouri, and even longer before that, with singing "And Are We Yet Alive?" just as we started worship this morning. And we sing that every year. Some years it is because there is hope and there is vitality, and we know that we are singing the truth. Other years we are singing those words as aspirational, that we are hoping for that to be the truth as we go through challenging times. Most years it's a combination of both. But it was good to be together. Our theme this year for annual conference was Greater Things, taken from our scripture reading that we had this morning out of John 14. And so this morning we're going to take a look at what happened at the annual conference, kind of through that lens. Also take a look at what the next 6 months or so around here will look like, using that same sort of lens. Because I truly believe that greater things are still out there. That God has put us in this place in this time because we have the right set of skills, talents, and people to do good work, not just in our Missouri conference, but right here in Marceline also. But here is the challenge. The workshop I went to on Friday, one of the things that we talked about was Liminal Space. And this was a great workshop. I was telling some folks before, I went to this, I showed up for this, and I had a very low bar for this. And I was expecting, it was an all-day workshop. It started in the morning and it was going to be over at 5. And I thought, well, they're going to pay for my lunch for this. Well, I've paid for lunch for this, so I'm going to stay through lunch and then I'm going to go do something else. I ended up staying until 5 o'clock and then waiting in line to get a book signed afterwards. I mean, I was not expecting that to be a thing. And the workshop was ostensibly about the Enneagram. I don't know if anyone has ever heard of that. I need to do some more work and study on that, but we're going to pick that up in the fall, and something that can help us with knowing ourselves, with relationships with others, and all sorts of things. We'll do some sort of class in the fall, but I've got to do some more preparation work for it. But it was good. It was a good workshop, and we spent a large chunk of the day talking about the Enneagram, but we also spent a good chunk of the day talking about spiritual practices. One of those was that welcoming prayer we did Tuesday afternoon online as part of our prayer time on Facebook. Another one was talking about this isn't so much a practice, but it is a way of thinking about where we are right now, and that is that liminal space. And liminal comes from the Latin word for threshold. So when you're standing on the threshold, you aren't quite into the place that you're going yet, but you aren't where you've been. You're in that, as one of the folks that led our workshop says, we're betwixt and between. Not where we're going, but we aren't where we've been yet. You all would have loved her. Her name is Suzanne Stadil, and she is this amazing combination of Paula Deen with a lot more grace and humility and about 50% more snark. You can imagine what it was like during spending all day in a class with her. It was good. But it's a good description of where we are. To say we are betwixt and between. More in general, that's a good statement for us, but specifically as a conference, that is where we are. Because we aren't to where we're going yet, but we're beyond where we've started. And we're figuring this out. As a conference, we are working on figuring things out, experimenting with things, trying to figure out what works. And I can tell you, for a bunch of pastors who are normally in our regular day-to-day lives pretty good at dealing with a higher level of chaos than most people, you get us on the conference level, we do not like change. And that's the time that we live in. That's just kind of where we are right now. One of those big changes coming up is that we are moving from 7 districts down to 5. And so as of July 1st, we are going to be in the new North Central District. That's that light blue one that's there on the map. Oh, for you all at home, there we go. That's the light. We go down to Jeff City. I don't remember if we get all the way to Warsaw. We go all the way up north to the Iowa line. We go over to the Macon County border, and then we go just a little bit west of Chillicothe, well, a little bit more than just west of Chillicothe. We've got a pretty big territory there that we're now a part of. And it's going to be a change. I've got friends of mine who are in Kirksville, and they're not used to being central to anything. They're always like, we're in the northeast part of the state. What's this central stuff? It's kind of a bit of a switch for us. But as a way to kind of help work through that, because one of the other things that we're learning is that as churches, we need to know each other just a little bit better to get together for more things. So there's a couple of things that I'm going to tell you to put on your calendar, but I know no one's going to put it on your calendar in worship today, so it's going to come out, and I'll have more information coming out as it goes. The first one is September 10th. It's a Saturday. It's also a home football game for Central Methodist, and that is going to be North Central District Day down at Central Methodist University. And we'll go to the football game. There'll be some tailgating going on. There'll be a chance to listen to some folks and mostly just kind of meet folks from all around this new district that we're a part of. And so for as many of us as want to go, we'll head down there. We'll head down to Fayette that day because Fayette now is in our district. One of the most important pieces of our of what we have in our conference, Central Methodist, is now a part of our district. And so we're going to go and celebrate down there that day. We also did the normal work of annual conference. We ordained 6 elders and deacons. We commissioned 9 elders and deacons. And the difference in there is once you ordain, that's kind of a terminal endpoint. You don't go any farther than that unless you have the unless you unfortunately get elected to bishop, and then that's beyond there. But then when you're commissioned, that's the start of a probationary period. So that's the last step before you're ordained. So we commissioned folks, we ordained folks, we celebrated folks that finished their course of study and finished licensing school. We remembered a lot of clergy who retired this last year because there was a large number of them. And in a memorial service, we remembered even more clergy and clergy spouses that passed away. Also including, because of we have a long tradition of remembering and celebrating the life of pastors and clergy spouses in Mozambique who also passed away. And so they are always a part of our memorial service at annual conference because we have such a close collection with them. We also, there were 2 offerings that were collected at annual conference this year that raised over $25,000 that most of that will go to Mozambique. The other part of it will go to the Diversely United Fund, which supports race and culture work in local churches all across the conference. And the bishop set out as a goal, he said, if we exceed this number, I can't remember what the number was he said, but I knew we were going to get past it. He said, Susan and I are going to go on the zip line that's down there in Branson. This is their picture after they got off the zip line. I don't think he was too upset having to go down across off that zip line. I think he had a good time with it. But it's not every day you see, I did see a video of him, but it's not every day you see your bishop go flying down across the thing down there. That is something else that we have done. We also approved our 2023 conference budget, which is continuing to work to keep expenses low while providing more opportunities for ministry and for support. And something different going into 2023 that will be new for us is that we used to have 2 apportionment lines, one for the district and one for the conference. This year, it's just going to 1 apportionment line, and they're working on getting that number down. The bishop's goal is to get to 10%. It's not even just of our operating expenses, but it's a subset of that even. So we're working on pulling that number down. It's going to take a little bit of time to get there, but that's a big change that is happening. As a conference, we are working on changing the culture of our institution of the church, focusing more on better equipping our churches and preparing us to cross that threshold into the new thing that is coming. With that, the second thing to add to your calendar that I'll send more information out probably this week because I do know where the registration link for this one is that, and this one you don't have to go very far for, because on August 4th, we are hosting a rural and small town learning day. I've been in the last year, I've been part of a kind of a pilot program to kind of figure out how do we help our small and rural churches learn together, grow together, share ideas and that sort of thing. And so kind of the first step out of that program is that on August 4th we're going to host one of them, and then there'll be another one coming up in November at a different location, just to invite folks to come and share and learn and grow together. And so that'll be here on August 4th. So there was a lot more that went on at conference, and it's hard to figure out, try and keep this all condensed down as much as possible. But also to recognize that we are in fact in a liminal space. And part of being in a liminal space is to recognize that we have the things that are encouraging that we look forward to, and then there's the challenges and the struggles and the things that we're trying to figure out that aren't maybe going the way that we want. And the elephant in the room, of course, with the United Methodist Church is that we still have not had a general conference since the special called session in 2019, and we are still working out of the 2016 Book of Discipline. Which for Methodists means that's a really long time to be stuck with one book. We aren't used to that quite so much. But it also means that we have not come to a resolution to the immediate situation regarding the church split, and more importantly about having conversations about human sexuality. We just haven't done that yet. This is the definition of liminal space, betwixt and between. We've been in it for a long time now. Part of that means is that we recognize some of the things that are kind of happening right now in the midst of stuff, and that is that one of the things we were able to do in 2019 was the General Conference passed a process for disaffiliation for churches that wanted to either go independent or want to join another denomination. This process of disaffiliation lets those churches keep their property while maintaining the integrity of the trust clause. So let me unpack that just a little bit. The trust clause, if you don't know what that is a section of every deed for every United Methodist property that we have, and has been since the beginning of John Wesley's time, that says we hold these properties in trust for the annual conference. So we don't actually technically own our property here. We hold it in trust for the conference. And this is, like I said, this has been in place for a long time. Several years ago, I was needing to find the original deed for one of my churches that started in 1857. We needed to try and figure out where the property lines were, because it had been a while since anyone had really looked at that. And this was what it looked like back in 1857. It's a bad scan of it, but it took me a while to find it. But you can find the trust clause in there that says that was for one of for the Methodist Episcopal Church South, which the United Methodist Church is a successor organization to. It's been around for a long time. The trust clause isn't a statement of possession or control, but it's a statement of shared ministry and accountability. You all have heard me say this before, that whenever we see big church scandals or big church fights happen or big church splits happen, generally the main thing that it's about is that there's been a loss of accountability somewhere. And what the trust clause does is it helps provide some of that accountability for us. Frankly, meaning that if we wanted to sell the church today, or we wanted to do a major building project, like beyond the ark, beyond the boat and what we've done in the back, we'd have to have approval from the conference. They like to make sure all your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed, and that things are going to hold up the way they're supposed to and not fall in on you. That's what they just want to make sure everything is done right, and that you know how it's all going to get paid for. That's kind of one of the things that they do. So I think it's a good thing that we have, but it's one of the challenges that we then figuring out when churches want to go and do something different. How do you deal with that? And so I think the trust clause is good for us, but it means that we have to figure out how to make things work. Because it means that churches just can't simply leave when they want to leave. So in 2019, out of that special session of General Conference, we set up a process to do that. In its most basic terms, the requirements of it are that if you want to go and join either another denomination or go independent, you have to pay 3 years of apportionments, and you have to pay your portion of the unfunded pension liabilities. If you don't know what an unfunded pension liability is, the Missouri Conference is 100% funded for our pastors' pensions. That's a good place to be. Now, it doesn't mean that if everyone decided to up and retire today, doesn't mean that we'd be able to pay out all of those benefits. Now, some of you all know how this works better than I do. This is the down and dirty way of saying this. That difference between being 100% funded and what it would actually cost if you had to pay everything out is the unfunded liability. And so the conference has an actuarial formula that they plug your church in, they plug in some other data points, and they spit out whatever that number is. And we've had a number of churches in the conference that have gone through this process and have disaffiliated, and some have gone on to join other denominations, others have gone independently, and they have done so with the conference blessing. Because one of the things that we're trying to do in the midst of all of this that is different from the other large denominations that we've seen struggle with this is that we want to make sure that we can still be in ministry with folks after the fact. That we want to make sure that we don't build up any bad will between folks. We want to try to do this that makes the process as smooth and as easy as possible, but also doesn't place an undue burden on the folks that are staying with the United Methodist Church. And this is a process that does that well. Now, that being said, there are some churches that are fighting against that, and so there are currently 3 churches that have sued the conference to try and get around that. Anyone who is looking at that is a lawyer in good repute can look at that and say there's probably not much chance of them having any success. And in fact, in several states where similar lawsuits have been brought, the judges, recently one out of Atlanta, have told those churches, you need to go back to mediation with the church. And the church looks at them and says, well, this is the process. Here's what this entails. It's not mediation so much as it's saying, well, you've got to go back and do what it says. This is how that goes. The trouble is that it's just going to take time for that system to work. And we're kind of stuck until that gets itself all worked out through all of the relevant courts that are involved. And it's three different counties across the state where those lawsuits have been filed. And so it's going to take some time before that gets worked out. Like I said, this is liminal space. I believe that our conference is working on making changes that will lead to those greater things that we've been talking about, that Jesus talks about in the scripture reading. But it's a slow process. In the state of Missouri, we have a couple hundred years of Methodism that we're working on, and anytime you work with an organization that has that much institutional history to it, nothing happens quickly. Any change takes some time to work itself through, but I believe that we are making that change. We're working on moving into a different direction. Now, none of us know where it's quite going to land yet. We have some ideas, we have some inklings of what that's going to be, but we don't know quite what it will be as of yet. And so the best advice that we have coming from our conference is that, well, 2024 is going to tell us a lot when we finally are able to get together for general conference again. It's still a couple of years away, but we have a global denomination with folks coming from every country in the world and speaking a ridiculous number of languages, and the logistical nightmare of getting all those folks together in one place with all the relevant translators in place so that things can happen is kind of a challenge. But they are working on it, and we should have that by then. And as we get closer to 2024, we'll begin to see more of the pieces and the outlines of what things may look like afterwards that will be coming out. Now, this was a lot of jumping into the weeds of things. If you want to know more, come see me sometime. We'll sit down and get a good strong cup of coffee, and I can answer any other questions that you have. I'm trying to stay up to date as much as possible on this, but there's a lot of details involved. So if you have any questions, please feel free to come and ask me sometime, and we can sit down and talk about it. In the meantime, though, we aren't done here. God isn't done with us. Greater things are still waiting. We've been in liminal space for a couple of years, but I think we're beginning to see what is on the other side of this. This summer, we're starting to look in old and new directions for what that may be. We've got Vacation Bible School coming up. It's going to be in the morning this year, which I kind of like. We've got story time on the Ark that is coming up, and in fact we've got some of those like rubber mulch that will make a really nice soft surface. Only it's blue colored. That'll be going around the Ark in a couple of weeks. Hopefully it gets here before story time starts, so it will look like our boat is sitting in a very tiny pond. But it will be some water down there. I mean, we've got that coming. We've got some other projects that are in the works, including including an outdoor worship and event space that will probably go up in stages, because if you've seen construction costs recently, you know what that's looking like. But that will be a place where we can have worship outdoors on occasion. That'll be a place where we can do an outdoor vacation Bible school or other kids' activities. It'll be a place where parents can go and sit, or grandparents can go and sit while their kids are playing. There'll be a space for weddings or family reunions. Our backyard is expanding our capacity for ministry in ways that are unique in Marceline. And I'm looking forward to seeing what that does. But as we expand outward, we also have work to do inside as well. Back in the very earliest part of 2020, almost literally days before everything shut down, we were having a planning meeting, finally, because we had to postpone it a few times. We had a planning meeting where we were beginning to put together the pieces for a capital campaign to do much needed work inside the building, primarily here in the sanctuary, but other things around also. And we are getting ready to get that started in the fall. It's taken some time to get things back on track, and priorities have shifted, costs have increased, and we've been looking at different things that we want to do. But being in this liminal space, it's given us time to kind of work through what we should do and what we should be thinking about. And what I need from you all is that as we begin looking towards this capital campaign, is to think about what you can do as a part of it, but also think of our church. Us as a part of it, our building as a part of it, and how we can be together more a part of our community. What kind of space can we provide? How can we use what we already have? What can we do that would impact the lives of those that are around us? If you aren't sure what I mean by this, think about if you've ever thought to yourself or said, why doesn't someone do this? Flip that question a little bit and ask it this way: what if we did this? That's the question to begin asking. We have a unique place in our community. We have a unique location of all the churches in Marceline. We're at the entrance to downtown, but also a very unique group of folks that make up our church. We come from every place in town. We've got folks that are there, and everything that goes on. I think Doug told me when I was getting ready to come up here, 4 years getting ready to start, 5 years ago now, he said, you can't do anything in Marceline without a Methodist being involved somewhere. And he was more right than even I knew at the time, that is a true statement. We have a unique gift of who we are, such that we can share our faith and who God is with folks in a way that is different and is important. And being a part of a capital campaign isn't just about revitalizing our building, but it's also about revitalizing ourselves and who we are as a church, such that God's glory will be seen even more. The joy of liminal space is when we finally cross out of that threshold into that new place. Doing something new, but we can go and we can do that knowing with full confidence that we are God's people. And we know that we are going where He is sending us. And for all that is happening around us, we can go because God goes with us. And so we can cross that threshold with hope and promise for the future, and I'm looking forward to seeing what that will be. So we go from today. This was the annual conference. This is us. This is kind of where we are looking to head and the work that is ahead of us and the excitement that we have for this summer. So in the midst of all of this, let us go and do all of this, knowing that we do this in Christ's name. Amen.